the way economies have behaved. Yeah. So the way US and Europe have behaved as economies, that clearly has a rub-off effect on these stocks, because Indian IT is largely export, and India is hardly there in terms of revenue contribution. And these two economies contribute large part of the revenue. In fact, for many companies, entire revenue comes from there. Asia, Africa are very small, if at all there are there. So if the economy is going through a challenge, you cannot expect the IT sector to start hold on to the growth levels, etc. Second problem which has happened is that the valuations for the sector clearly had run very high during the 2021 as a calendar year. So the sector, IT sector, which used to trade at a multiple of 18 times, went as high as 35 times. And this is a sector level P that I'm giving you. In between, there were stocks which went to even 50, 60 kind of multiples also. So at that valuation, what happens usually in the market is that at peak valuations, even a small bit of negative news will usually see the stocks correcting or the sector correcting massively. And the same happens on the downside. If the stocks are very thinly valued and P ratios are very low, even a small positive will usually see some good uptick happening. So in Jan 22, the sector was valued at 35 times. Okay. And then in February, the war happened. Then we were talking about oil prices and gas prices hitting the roof, inflation caught up, and interest rates went up. So all of that kind of followed it. So every month we were having negative flows and negative news flows, and that kept on, harming the valuations of the sector. So that was the second thing which happened. Third thing which happens usually in a high growth kind of sector, or growth which is slightly higher than in the past, is if the interest rates go up, then the valuations usually take a knock, and it takes a knock higher for the higher valued companies, and it takes lower knock for a lower valued company. And that is what happened, because we saw value pack doing better at a market level, and the growth pack actually saw a very tough year last year. So these were the three things which is why the sector behaved the way it behaved. Okay. Now, if I'm talking about outlook, okay, so let's look at all the three parameters again. First parameter is valuation. So 18 went to 35. 35 is now back to 18. Okay. In the recent months, whatever we've seen in the stocks, now the sector level P is back to 18 times, which is a pre-COVID number. So on that, we are fairly comfortable. Second is on the interest rate. Now, at least Fed meet just happened yesterday, and it looks like it's kind of peaked out. They are talking about 2 more rate cycle hikes, but I think let's see how it goes. But we are not talking about 2% interest rate going to 5% or any kind of that 2-3% kind of move. So that also is more or less now looks like in the pack. Okay. Now the third angle is the US economy and the Europe economy. Now, when I am looking at the commentaries of the top US banks or top manufacturing companies there, or top retail companies, at least the banks are talking about recession in the following months, now starting June, July, something like that. We haven't seen that yet, but most banks are indicating that later part of 23 is when recession should hit the US numbers. And hence, if I'm looking at a very near term, something like a June ended quarterly results, which will start in the first week of July, 10th, 12th July, and we will start having the result season kicking in. So the commentary for the Indian IT companies this time around in the quarter should not be very exciting. It will be little cautionary. It will indicate that there are problems. And if you look at any commentary of the US IT services companies, like EPAM gave the results recently, and you would have also read about it, and we saw all the mid-cap companies collapsing on that day. So EPAM is one of the top US IT services companies, and they said that they gave a profit warning twice in the last 3 months. So they came and they said that we will not grow this much, and then they said that now we will actually degrow in this year. So those are the kind of commentaries which we are hearing from the US companies. I think that even Indian IT companies will somewhere echo it. So we are not looking at a very great quarter or commentary for the June ended quarter. How will it pick up in September, December? Today, when I am talking to companies, they are all saying second half will recover very well. So will second half recover or not? I think a lot will depend on how US behaves. But the very near quarter is not looking very exciting, according to what the data points we are seeing and the commentaries which are coming from the US. So then, to come back to your question as to the outlook, I think that look, in the next 1 quarter, probably 2 quarters, we are not going to see much happening in terms of positive outlook. But because the valuations are already at about 18 times, even if the stock's correct, I think they will find its way back to the current levels at least. So on the downside, I think that we are more or less protected. I don't see much downside from here on. Okay. On the outlook, I think that if we are taking a 2 or a 3 year view, clearly look at this sector as a low double-digit growth kind of sector. And then it also gives you a kind of dividend of 3% to 4%, depending on which company we are talking. That's the kind of outlook I think one can look at in terms of growth for this sector. And at best, it will be a market performer to a slight outperformer. That's how I'm looking at the sector. Okay. Now, let's come to the fund, which is what I think even my team was trying to highlight. I'll just preempt and I'll give you a sense and you can shoot the questions. See, I have been managing this fund since 2018. Okay. And there have been 3 cycles the way I have managed this fund. So if I have to categorize up to how I manage, there are 3 very clear cycles. The first cycle was in 2019, where or the first 1.5 to 2 years, where I kept this fund very concentrated. Only the large cap stocks were largely there. So 80% was large cap, and mid and small was very small. And concentration was also high because we had only 17 or 18 stocks in the fund. Okay. Then the second cycle was starting June 20, which is when the COVID impact was already into the numbers, all the way up to Jan 22. So for that 1.5 years, the fund, the way I managed the fund was, it was very fragmented. We had almost 50 number of stocks, and we had heavy mid and small. Mid cap and small cap put together was almost 50%, and large cap was only 44%. We had 3-4% of overseas. So it was a very broad-based portfolio and heavy on the mid and small. Starting Jan 22, I started going back to large caps, and almost the fund became 75% large cap. And I also kept cash. So almost I can tell you from Feb 22, if you pick up any fact sheet of ours, up till Feb of this year, which is Feb 23, we were sitting on 8 to 9% cash on every single month, right? Within large cap also, the change that I did was I added some stocks which were not stitched to US economy, which would not get impacted if US were to go into recession. So because it's a sectoral fund, we have to be 80% into core IT names, but I could stick some leeway and I could add some names. So we added Bharti Airtel, which became almost 7-8% of the fund. We added ABB, Siemens, and Honeywell, which became around 3-4%. All 3 stocks put together. So these were the kind of bets we took: Tata Communication, Rail, Reddington. So all of these which are not linked to US economy. So that gave us some cushion, and the cash, that both actually helped us to do better than the benchmark. But obviously it's an IT fund, and you will have to, you will go through the volatility if the sector is not doing well. Now, how am I thinking ahead? So the cash that we were sitting on, I started deploying the cash, and the last 2 months, 3 months, we've deployed the cash. So we are not sitting on any cash now. Where has the deployment happened? Deployment has happened, half of the deployment has happened into one of the large cap names where I'm very, very convinced of a decent return that we can make into the future. And the rest, 4% is gone into mid-small category. Are we back to going? Am I thinking of going back to 30-40% mid and small cap? Frankly, the valuations are not giving me the comfort yet. Yes, stocks have done well, but frankly, if you ask me, it's not that the industry scenario is improved a lot. And usually in these scenarios, large cap companies tend to do better off than the mid and small. because there are a lot of factors and we can get into the details if you want. And that was a view when I took in Feb 22, that look, if the going is bad, let's go towards large cap. Small mid may not do well. But yes, I can say that some of the mids have actually not fallen so much as I would have expected, and they're holding up pretty well. We have also not let go on all the large and mid cap or the small and mid caps, which wherever I have comfort, we're holding on to them. And we will keep chipping in more and more as the valuation comfort sets in. So that's the broader view of what I'm thinking on sector, how have I managed the fund, and how I see the next quarter.
I'll ask the one question, then I'll open the dais for the our investors. So, ma'am, just one question. The last decade has been of a IT sector. IT sector has done wonders in the last decade. So how do you think about, basically all of us are, long-term investors. So first of all, tactically, we have just started giving a tactical bet on the IT sector because it is very undervalued. It is heavily hit. So I think we are just, accumulating this sector in a small way for our investors with the horizon of another 2 to 4 years. That is number one. And number two, over a longer horizon in last decade has been belong to IT sector. So how do you think that upcoming sector is upcoming decade is going to be, that whether IT is going to perform like the way it has done in the past? Thank you.
Sure. So Manishji, very difficult to comment on the returns of last 10 years versus the following 10 years, but I'll give you a sense of whatever I can share. One is that if you look at the world today, we are digitizing at a very fast pace. No matter what company, what project, what vertical you are in, today you have to be digital. And this definition of digital is changing every day. Tomorrow, what was digital, today it's an old technology, and the new technology is moved ahead. Like a generative AI, what ChatGPT is for users like you and me, but there is a generative AI platforms which are getting built by Google and by Microsoft, which will be used by these large companies, enterprises, banks going into the future. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the spend on these tech is definitely increasing day by day. And it's not only restricted to certain, like earlier, banking used to be the one sector which will adapt new technology much faster. But today, every industry is adopting the technologies at a faster pace. And it's become the need of the hour. So going by that, I think the overall world IT services spend or IT spend are increasing versus, if you look at a 3 or a 5 year scenario. Yes, there can be 1 year or a 2 year, like if the economy is going through a challenge, there can be cuts and there will be some rationalization, which is probably 2023 is the year of that rationalization probably. But from a 3, 4 year, 5 year view, you will be spending much more than today what you're spending today. So that way, that's the one thing. Second thing is, if you look at India's role in the global IT spend, and if I give you some data points, the market share of Indian IT companies, if I had to just plot the top IT companies of India and top of US, and if I see how they have moved in terms of market share, we were at about 10% market share, say in FY10. Today we are at 25% odd market share. So we have been increasingly taking more market share every year. And that is what has led to us growing faster. So Indian IT services industry grows at, on an average, pre-COVID numbers, if I give you 7-8%, versus the global IT industry grows at 3% or so. So we are growing faster because we are taking more market share. And this trend is probably going to continue because today India provides you one of the best talent. One of the number of engineers that India provides is far higher than anywhere in the global. We have almost 2.5 to 3 lakh kind of engineers passing out of the core engineering, IT related seats, and overall engineering pool is almost 8 to 10 lakh. No other country gives you that. Today, 50 lakh, more than 50 lakh people are employed by the IT industry in India alone, and obviously we have people sitting outside as well. So I am saying the kind of human tech base that we have in terms of engineer and talent, we will continue to do this in terms of taking market share. So both, one, the industry is growing better, And if I look at the Gartner or ISG, which are market agencies, which give you market research reports, they are expecting that global IT services, which was growing at 3-4%, will grow at 6 to 7% over the next 3-4 years. So if that were to come through, then India will grow at 10-11%. And which is why when I said that we should grow at 10-11% or say low double digit, that's where that guidance is also coming from, or the view is coming from. So that's how I'm looking at it, that from a 3 to 5 year view, India is well placed, digital spends are growing, and this becomes a more structural kind of play. Yes, 2023 is going to be a challenging year, and you cannot escape that given global, developed economies, the way they are behaving.
It means this is the year of accumulation. Then we are not going to get the chance for the further accumulation, right?
True.
Thank you, ma'am. So now I would like to open the dais for my investors. Hello, everyone. If anybody has any question related to IT sector, please come forward and you can ask. Thank you.
Manish, can I ask one question? Yeah, am I
Yes.
audible?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a very good overview which you gave. Thank you for that. I have just one question pertaining to the fund. For example, when I was looking at the holding which you have currently right now, you have a couple of global stocks also, like Alphabet, and I think Meta is, I think, Facebook, right?
Meta is Facebook.
So as a fund, I was just wondering, like, is there any limit to how much you can invest in global stocks? Is there some mandate which you follow for that? And secondly, like you quoted the example of chat GPT and other technologies, which are just, the start of the flavor, and, you will see a lot of new things coming in very soon. So blockchain is one of them. So if there is a limit to what you can invest as a fund in the global stocks, so is there a cap on this, or you can fully, take advantage of all these opportunities that come, or you have to just stick to some kind of domestic proportion in that?
Sure. So, Ashish, we have a cap of 20% on the global overseas holding that we can go to. Okay, the cap is 20. But what has happened is that since last year, February, RBI has put an embargo on all the mutual funds that they cannot incrementally invest into the overseas stocks, because we as a country have hit the limit. So mutual funds have been asked to not park anything additional. So the challenge at my end is that because I was more positive on India, and we were making the best out of it, and by the time we thought that now, and Nasdaq started correcting little earlier than Indian stocks did, but we ran into that embargo problem. So now the challenge at my end is that I was holding almost close to 4% of my fund into overseas. So I can only rotate it between the names, but I cannot add anything incrementally. So
Further
we used to own, yeah. So we used to own Alphabet, Globant, Accenture, Cognizant. So some of them we've actually moved out, and we added Meta 2 months back, which is what you're seeing in the fact sheet now. So right now we are at a fix right now. Yeah.
So that limitation is still there.
It's still there. We are also waiting that whenever RBI lifts the embargo, and I hope it happens at a time when we are still finding attractive opportunities there, because once the stock run up, it doesn't make sense.
Because when we were listening to the news of semiconductor war and everything going on, Nvidia, AMD, all these stocks became very cheap.
Yes.
As compared to last 2 years, 1 year. So they were like all screaming opportunities which everyone wanted to lap on. So I think, I get your point. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish.
Excuse me, can I ask one question, please?
Yes, Jaswinder ji, please ask.
Yes. Ma'am, as you are saying that we have to be defensive for at least 1 or 2 years as of now. 23 is going to be a challenging year, and we have to be defensive. So are we looking at investing only in large caps? Is your fund only investing in large caps right now, mainly concentrating on large caps now?
So Jasmita, so what happens usually in the market is that market generally preempt and try to factor in much ahead of time, which is what has happened, right? In Jan 22 to now, the index fell, but if you look at revenue numbers of these IT companies, there was concern only which started coming in the March ended quarter. Until last year December, no companies was actually flagging a lot of concern, but the stocks were already reflecting what is going to happen in future. So today, when the valuations are at 18 times, large part of the negativity is already factored in, according to me. Okay. Now, the point that you're making into your question, right now we are still large capish, but we were sitting on cash and we've deployed half of that cash into mid and small. And to earlier question of Manish ji, that I answered, that incrementally, wherever we find opportunities, we will go towards mid and small. Because what happens is that next 6 months are probably going to be challenging, which is I said that as June quarter commentary is going to be negative. But if starting Jan 24 onwards, if things are going to be better off, then you will start seeing that probably happening a little before that itself. Or say next year by June, if things are going to materialize, you'll see that happening in Jan itself. So I'm saying markets are much smarter than all of us, I believe. They always try to factor in much ahead of time what is going to happen. So that's what we are trying to do. I mean, the cash that I was sitting on, I mean, sitting on a 600 crore cash was not giving me a peaceful sleep for a good 1 year. But that was a tough call and I had to take it. And finally, only in Feb I started investing. That चलो अभी valuation हो गया है 18 time. अब यहाँ से गिरेगा नहीं तो अब डाल दो पैसे. That's how it is.
Understood, ma'am. Actually, many out of us, we are investors ourselves. We want to try stocks also. I'm talking generally about my clients and my friends and everyone. So we have been investing in small caps and mid caps also. और IT को we have been always been मतलब हमारा it's been a darling. तो वो नहीं चल रहा और वो पता नहीं अभी 1 साल और 2 साल में भी नहीं चलेगा. But we are still very bullish on it, and I'm one of them. I'm investing on small and mid caps, not very highly, but that's the thing. We just want a comfort from you कि IT का mid and small cap कहीं हम बिल्कुल गलत तो नहीं कर रहे.
सर, अगर अपॉर्चुनिटी जैसे मैं बोल रही थी कि डिजिटल में जनरेटिव एआई को लेकर इतना ज्यादा अपॉर्चुनिटी आ रहा है सामने, तो लार्ज हो चाहे मिड हो चाहे स्मॉल हो, रेवेन्यू ग्रोथ तो और डील विन तो सबको आएंगे. और स्मॉल में बेनिफिट ये होता है कि आपकी साइज छोटी होती है तो आपका ग्रोथ भी ज्यादा दिखने लग जाता है. तो आप छोटी साइज पे आप अगर 500 मिलियन की साइज की बिजनेस पे हो और आपको अगर 50 मिलियन की डील मिल गई तो आपको 10% ग्रोथ तो एक ही डील दे जाती है. तो वो बेनिफिट हमेशा रहता है स्मॉल मिड में.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Hemant, you just said that you want to ask a question. Please go ahead. And if anybody else wants to ask a question, most welcome. ये मौका दोबारा नहीं मिलेगा. मैम ने मुश्किल से थोड़ा सा टाइम हमारे लिए निकाला है. तो if anybody has any question, most welcome.
Manish ji, ma'am has next commitment at 4:30, so please according to
I'm little pressed for time, but we still have, I think, 3-4 minutes.
Yes, actually,
just that calendar lag nowadays. So
I can totally imagine, that today I think the people have started talking about IT. So I can understand.
Manish, I'll quickly chip in with a small question.
Mm-hmm.
Ma'am, like you quoted examples of AI and chat GPT going forward. Like this is uncertain, but this is highly potential, no doubt about that. But in general, when we talk about recession and the projects are drying up and we are saying Indian IT is more or less going to be echoing, what is happening around the globe, right? But in general, do we find projects like, they have a time duration of 10 to 12 years, right? So if these companies have their order book, which is very sorted, right? They have a running projects, and there we keep hearing TCS is getting brilliant projects from UK, Europe, and everywhere, and the frequency is increased. So like, ma'am, more or less, it's kind of a stable environment. The growth might have shifted a little, because of the base effect or whatever we want to say.
Hmm.
So is it that gloomy or something like, just based on your experience? Like,
Okay.
put it in
No,
context.
so that's a good question, Ashish. So क्या होता है इसमें? So आज एक न्यूज आई थी. I don't know if you got a time to catch that. एक न्यूज आई थी कि TCS ने जो डील साइन की थी 2018 में, वो कैंसिल कर दी गई है. ठीक है. अब ये डील थी ट्रांस अमेरिका की इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसीज की डील थी, जहाँ पे ऑलमोस्ट 10 बिलियन पॉलिसी होल्डर्स का डेटा ट्रांसफॉर्म करना था एंड ऑल दैट. सो उसमें ये हुआ है कि अब ये 6 साल ऑलरेडी डील में था. 10 साल की डील थी, 6 साल ऑलरेडी उसने काम भी किया. बट अब वो क्लाइंट बोल रहा है कि ये सारा काम मैं अभी अपने आप से करूंगा, अभी आपकी जरूरत नहीं है. सो ये $2 बिलियन की डील थी. साल का अगर डिवाइड करके 10 साल करे तो $200 मिलियन हर साल इसको रेवेन्यू आती थी इससे. ठीक है. तो ऐसे टाइम पे एक तो ये हो जाता है कि आपकी एग्जिस्टिंग डील पे भी क्लाइंट बोलता है कि भैया अब मुझे लगता है तुमको पैसे डील दूंगा, ज्यादा पैसे खर्च हो रहे हैं, मैं अपने आप से कर सकता हूँ. ठीक है. तो वो एक चीज होती है. दूसरी ये होती है कि एग्जिस्टिंग जो आपका बिजनेस है उसमें क्लाइंट आपको वैसे भी ना, ये जो आईटी इंडस्ट्री वो डिफ्लेशनरी होती है. आज आपने कोई डील साइन की $100 मिलियन की, अगले साल उसकी रिन्यूअल होगी तो बोलेगा 90 में कर दो आप काम, फिर अगले साल आएगा 80 में कर दो. तो जब डिफिकल्ट ईयर होता है तो वो 90 के बदले उसी साल बोलेगा 80 में कर दो. तो प्राइसिंग प्रेशर भी थोड़ी बढ़ जाती है, आपको प्राइस और कट देना पड़ता है. तीसरा ये होता है कि जो नया काम आ रहा होता है, अब जैसे कि जनरेटिव एआई की बात करते हैं. ठीक है. अब कोई क्लाइंट सोच रहा है कि भाई जनरेटिव एआई पे तो मुझे, उसने 6 महीने पहले शायद बोल दिया कि मुझे इस पे $1 बिलियन का खर्चा करना है, 5 साल बाद तो यही होना है, तो आज से काम शुरू करते हैं. पर वो देखेगा कि यार 6 महीने इकोनॉमी में तो बहुत चैलेंज है, तो बोलेगा डील तो साइन हो गई है पर 6 महीने काम शुरू मत करना, 6 महीने बाद देखेंगे. तो ये सारे अलग अलग चीजें होती हैं जो टफ टाइम में होती हैं. सो रीजन तो आप जो बोले वो बहुत सही है कि द आउटलुक इज वेरी गुड, द डील्स आर देयर इन द मार्केट एंड क्लाइंट्स वांट टू स्पेंड, बट डिले करना या टेम्पररीली उसको सस्पेंड कर देना, ये सब चीजें ऐसे टाइम पे होती हैं, which is why the commentary started becoming weak now.
That's a real time bottleneck you're talking about, right?
That is how it is. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. Right.
मैम इन द एंड जरा एक आईटी के लिए अच्छे वर्ड, ब्यूटीफुल वर्ड्स बोल दिए, बिकॉज वी लव आईटी सो मच. कैन यू हियर मी?
Yes, I can.
मतलब towards the end, just give us a few good words about IT, because we are all following it from last so many years and heavily invested into it.
सर गुड वर्ड्स क्या बोलूं, मतलब आप और मैं बैंक गए नहीं इतने सालों से. पहले हमारे पेरेंट्स हर हफ्ते बैंक जाते थे, राइट? आप और मैं खाना ऑर्डर करते हैं ऑनलाइन. अब ये डिजिटल नहीं है तो क्या है, बस ये बढ़ने ही वाला है, ये कम नहीं होने वाला.
Thanks.
Just one last question before we wind up. The question from Hemant. Just one last question. Yes, Hemant ji, please.
Yeah, ma'am. Good morning. So, first of all, I tell you, I am already an investor in the Tata Digital Fund. But my question is that I look at the returns, compare the return of the fund with other funds. There is another fund in the IT sector, Aditya Digital Fund. And over the years and years, every year basically, the Tata Digital Fund is not able to perform as good as the Aditya Digital Fund is performing. So what is the reason?
So, sir, I think it depends on which year you're seeing, because 2020-21, we actually won a lot of awards for the best performing fund. But this year, obviously, they are slightly ahead of us, and we are at about, about 3-4% lower or something, I guess. So, ऐसा नहीं है कि every year they have performed, because you can check the data in the past, and I'm sure Manish can also share some data if he has. So it depends on, there will not be every year where we can be best, but let me tell you, in 2018 also we were the best.
7-year data I have. Last 7-year data I have, and every year in last 7 year it is like.
So when you look at 7 year, it's a CAGR data. So that changes if 1 year is bad and it gets overlapped.
Yeah, madam. Meeta ma'am, Shivansh.
Yeah, Shivansh.
Yes. Hemanji, just to add on your 7 years, sir. If you see, sir, 7-year return, sir, for our digital fund, So there are, sir, 5 fund, the digital fund in the industry and mutual fund. And sir, on a 7-year basis, sir, the return is, I think the highest return is 18.41, and we are at 17.60, sir. So return for 5-year and 7-year for the entire industry, the average return is 17 to 18%. We are there. And for 3-year, the average return for the industry is 30%. Our return is 31%, sir. So we are above the industry average. Even on the 2-year also, sir. The industry average is 6% and our return is 6%, sir. So I think if I exclude this last 1 year, we are there on the performance, sir. There is no challenge on the performance. If you want to, I can share the data also.
No, sir. I'll share the year-on-year data. I do have that. I have seen that out of last 5 years, I think 3 to 4 years we are in the top 2.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, yes.
What
yes.
has gone wrong in the last year? If you can just tell us.
So I have to wind up in 2 minutes, but I'll quickly try and answer. So one is that our fund is not a TMT fund. Some of the funds are media, technology, and telecom fund. So that's where we have a slightly different kind of pool that we can invest in. And otherwise, you can go and check the holdings. We are very core to the theme of IT. We don't dilute the theme a lot, which other funds may or may not follow. But I think data-wise, Manishji can share some data. But I can tell you that, see, benchmark versus us, we have actually outperformed the benchmark by almost 5 percentage points, even in a year like what it has been the last 12 months. So that's what I would like to say. Yeah.
So, Manishji,
Thank you, ma'am.
Shivan shared, sir. So,
Thank
sir,
you.
I
So,
think,
Shivan, I'll excuse myself. So I have another.
Just winding up, ma'am.
Hi,
Thank you, ma'am.
please.
I think I know that you do have a meeting.
Shivansh can continue. I think he has a point to make, but I have to excuse myself.
Ma'am, I just
Thank
told
you,
that
thank
you
you.
have another meeting lined up. So thank you very much for your precious time and giving the insights about the IT sector. So looking forward to have such more meetings in the futures to come.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Meeta ma'am. Thank you, Manishji, for
Thank you,
conducting
Shivansh.
this meeting. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Thank you for
very
joining.
much.
Thank you, sir.